As I was thinking about speaking on that Memorial Day weekend, it got me thinking about the military for some reason, and that old Army slogan years ago, be all you can be, right? You've all seen those commercials, be all you can be. And that's a great slogan for a military man or woman, but I also believe it's a great slogan for a Christian, because I believe we were called to do great things. As Pastor Ryan spoke briefly this morning, I believe we were called to be all that we can be. That we're not just here going through the motions. We're not here taking up a seat. We're just not here doing a job or a career. We were called to be great. We were designed for greatness. We were put on this earth for a purpose. Jesus Christ, our Creator, specifically molded us and shaped us and designed us to do great things. So I don't think greatness in our life is something that we just think about or we just want to go in that direction. I believe it's something we have to chase down with our entire being. Because I believe no matter what situation you're in here in this morning, whether what your financial situation is, no matter what your career is, no matter whether you're a senior citizen, a young adult, or a toddler, whatever it is, I believe we all, each and every one of us, have a responsibility to achieve greatness in our life. We have a responsibility to achieve greatness in our life. If you're going to be a Christian, you might as well be a strong Christian, right? Don't just go through the motions. Pastor Rick used to always say one of his lines used to always say is, if you're going to be a bear, might as well be a grizzly. If you're going to step foot on this planet, you might as well desire and try to achieve to be one of the greatest. Pastor Josh is in the middle of his Evergreen series. The evergreen tree is always flourishing, is always great in season and out of season. It doesn't ever lose its color. It doesn't ever lose any of its leaves or needles or whatever they have. No matter what the environment, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstance, no matter where that tree is planted, it's always great. It's always full of color. There's over 630 species of evergreen trees. They're not all the same. I think that's the way we should live our Christian lives. In season, out of season, we should be attempting to achieve greatness. Just like there's various species of evergreen trees, there's obviously various species of people or gifts or callings. And I believe God has implanted in you a specific calling, and that's to achieve greatness in whatever that calling may be. But sometimes as Christians, we get, and I don't know where this comes from or when this started, we get the wrong thought process. Because I would ask you, is it wrong to be great? Is it wrong to have ambition? Is it wrong to have vision and passion? Is it wrong to be competitive? To try and be the best Christian you can possibly be? And I think as I ask those questions, is it wrong to be blessed? Is it wrong to be great? There's probably various answers that each of you might be thinking or might throw back at me. Because I think sometimes that unfortunately we think the Christian thing to do, the Jesus-like thing to do, is to make sure we're all on the same level. That I can't be ambitious because it's going to hold somebody else down. I can't chase after greatness because it's all going to be about me. And the Bible tells me that's not good. I can't have this ambition. I can't have this competitive nature to me because that's not what the Bible talks about. But the Bible does talk about that. The Bible does talk about chasing after greatness and having ambition and having drive and having a quest for greatness. But today what I want to do is, this morning, I hope to prove to you that there is indeed greatness inside of you. Prove to you that not only is there greatness inside of you, but what does this Bible say about greatness? What does Jesus say about greatness? How does he say that you can accomplish greatness and serve in his kingdom at the same time? But again, as Christians, sometimes we have this faulty mindset, this faulty way of thinking, that I can't do those things. Yet we look out in the world and we look at the people that maybe we think are great in the world. Maybe it's a George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Steve Jobs, Steph Curry, basketball player, or a baseball player. And we look at all those people, maybe an Olympic athlete, and we say, man, that man or woman had so much ambition. That man or woman was so competitive that they did whatever it took to achieve greatness. That person worked harder than anybody. They were so ambitious. Man, look how great they are. They've achieved a level of greatness. And we honor that. We do. We look at all those people and say, man, that is awesome. Our world's better off for it. But then somehow we translate that, I don't know how or why, to our Christian life, and we say, but I can't do that as a Christian. Because come on, everybody knows that Jesus wasn't competitive. Everybody knows that Jesus was quiet and soft-spoken and laid back and non-confrontational. Everybody knows that Jesus just wanted everybody to just get along, no matter what that meant, that he didn't want to ruffle any feathers. But that's not who Jesus was. Jesus came to be the Savior of the entire world. Jesus was competitive. Jesus had ambition. Jesus had drive. And I know I'm belaboring this point a little bit, but I'm passionate about it because I think this mindset is one of the greatest things that's holding Christian back all over this world. They're looking for other people. They're looking for the world to achieve greatness because the world can do that. We just have to get along and play nice and make sure we love everybody, whatever that means. And I'll tell you a little secret about myself. My family knows this is no secret, and maybe some of you do, but I hate to lose. I just despise losing. Like if I lose on something, whatever that is, sporting event, life, whatever, if I lose, it tears me up. I just can't function until I figure out a way to then win or prosper or do it better. But as a Christian, quite frankly, I'm kind of tired of hiding the fact that I'm competitive. I'm tired of hiding the fact that I want to win. Because I see in my life where as I've gotten older and I've gotten more spiritual, I've been less competitive. I've been okay with losing. I've been okay with mediocrity. Now that sounds good. That preaches kind of okay. Here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with accepting losing or accepting average, being okay with mediocrity. It's not biblical. There's like 3 people that understood that, but I'm just telling you, it's not biblical. God didn't come for average. I'm telling you, Jesus wanted to win. Jesus wasn't into losing or average. But as Christians or myself, you kind of fake it that you're not competitive. Fake it that you're okay with being average. And I'm competitive. I want to win. I think that probably came up playing sports growing up, grade school, high school, college. Then when baseball, I was a pitcher as well. And a pitcher, it's a high risk, high reward, right? Because you get to an old age, especially like college, and the game is really won or lost on how the pitcher performs. And I was so competitive. I was a world-class teammate. I was a great teammate on every other day except the day I happened to pitch. On those days, forget about it. Don't talk to me. Don't ask me a question. If I was in class, I couldn't have told you what was going on. I was so competitive. I was so laser focused on what was going on how am I going to win? How am I going to achieve? And that's something that is really, fortunately or unfortunately, it's carried on even when I coach my kids. It's that competitive never leaves. You have to have this desire to win. And it's not really about winning. The issue comes is when you accept losing, when you accept average, when you accept less than great. If you're going after something, whether it's life or a sporting event, if you're not going to win, well, what's the other option? You only have one. You're going to lose. This competition, it drives us to greatness. It's a laser-like focus. If we lose a basketball game that I'm coaching the boys, and after the game, and Christy, she's kind of learned me, so she knows to kind of like leave me alone. But she, one of two things usually happen after the game, walking off the court or whatever. She'll say, are you okay? And I usually just don't say anything. I just kind of like glance at her. Or she'll say, hey, good game. And I'll be like, did you look at the scoreboard? Well, yeah, but you did well. You coached the boys well. Yeah, but you realize we lost, right? These are real things I deal with. Even this is transferred into me preaching, even this morning. Now, as I've become more mature in age, that'd be the great way to say that, right? I'm not getting older, I'm getting more mature. I've learned how to deal with myself. Meaning that competitive nature I have in sports or what have you would be the same mindset I come when I'm speaking here this morning. Whereas in the morning when I get up and I'm getting ready, really kind of the last thing I want to do is talk to somebody. Now I'm a husband and a dad, so after years I've figured it out. But for the most part, Christy might be asking me questions in the morning, and I'll hear the lips moving, but I can't even explain. I'm not hearing anything. I just don't hear it. I don't know. Even I think it was last night, she said, hey, can we talk about something? I can't remember what it was. Because we didn't talk about it. Hold on. But no, I literally said, she said, hey, can we talk about something? And Brooke said, Mom, you know at this point, he's not going to hear a word you're saying. So we've kind of been able to walk through this as a family. But my point in saying all that is, it's okay to be competitive. And I'm tired in certain areas of my life, I'll speak for myself, that thinking being competitive is not okay. Or thinking that being ambitious for the things of God is not okay. Because this Christian life, it's about winning. Do you want to be you think Jesus wants us to be weak Christians or strong Christians? If he's going to move in this area, this city, in this nation, is he going to move through these people over here that's filled with a bunch of weak Christians, this church, or this church over here that's filled with a bunch of strong Christians? And I know what the super spiritual people are saying. You're saying, well, he's going to use both of those churches. You're right. But as for me, I want to be over here with the strong. I want to be over here that are competitive. I want to be with the church that says, hey, we had 200 people at this event. Next year, I want 400. We've had 30 people come to Christ. Next time, I want 60. And I believe, I'm kind of talking about this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I believe that this is the way Jesus thinks, or is close to it. This ambition that we have is okay as long as it's directed for his kingdom, not my kingdom. Philippians 2, verse 3 says, "Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself." It's about serving. The Message Bible says, "Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourself long enough to lend a helping hand." That's where we should have ambition in. I believe one of the most powerful expressions of being a human being is being lost when it comes to ambition. Jesus hasn't told us to set our ambition aside. He's told us to set our ego aside and do all these things serving his kingdom for his glory. Not for my glory, for his kingdom, not for my kingdom. We can't settle for something that's less than what he's asked us to be. We have a responsibility to be great. And I want to destroy in your mindset this morning that you can't be competitive, that you can't go through life chasing greatness. I believe it's biblical that we do. Because you're not comparing yourselves to other people. You're comparing yourself. You're in competition for the call of God on your life. Those evergreen trees that are always green, they're not competing with the other trees. Those evergreen trees are green in season and out of season. Just because other trees lose their leaves or die off in the winter, the evergreen tree doesn't care. That's how we should live as people. We're a shining light in season and out of the season. Whether the situation or the circumstance we are in is advantageous or maybe it's not the best, we can still serve people. It's not about competing against people. That's an easy game to win, right? If I want to win at something, I can find a group of people that are just not as good as me in that specific area. That's easy to do. It's not about winning, it's about advancing on the call of God on your life. Hey, this will sound weird coming from the stage probably, but I want to be great because I believe I have the responsibility to be great. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great husband. I want to be a great pastor. I want to be a great businessman. Why? Because I believe those things I just named are all part of my calling. I believe God has placed things in me that it's my responsibility to win in those areas of my life. You have them yourself. Whatever those areas that God's speaking to you or you're thinking about, or you have the passion for, the desire for, it's your responsibility to walk out God's calling. It's your responsibility to win on those things. And sometimes we back off because this quest for sameness is killing us. This quest that we all have to be equal. That I can't really achieve greatness because then the people around me, it'll be pushing them down. Everybody has to be on the same level. We all have to get along. We can never disagree on anything. Well, that's fine, and I guess we will get along. But on this quest for sameness, the only place we will ever meet is at the lowest common denominator. That's the only place we will ever meet, is the lowest common denominator. So what happens there is no one would ever be able to feel the greatness on their life. God will never be able to carry out his plans with that specific group of people. We don't need to worry about sameness. Our greatness will never come out. Nowadays we have, nobody gets a trophy anymore, right? There are no first place, second place. It's just everybody wins. A trophy, a ribbon, a medal. Sometimes there's no grades anymore. You don't get A, B, C, D. You get, I don't even know what they call it anymore. It's confusing sometimes. My son came home one day last week, and I think it was his history final or something. And he said, "Hey, Dad, my history final? It won't be too hard. It's for a completion grade." Anybody know what a completion grade is? That means if you finish it, if you complete it, I guess you've passed or got an A or something. That's crazy. How are you going to achieve any level of greatness if you just completed something? I tell you what, I'm kind of all for it. If, you roll back the clock, when I was in school, I would have signed up for every course that had a completion grade. I would have been a rock star student. I would have got scholarships all over the place. I'd have been perfect, right? I completed this, completed that. I can show up. But greatness isn't about self-ambition. It's about self-sacrifice. It's not about promoting ourselves. It's about promoting others. And there's a story in the book of Matthew, chapter 20, starting in verse 20, that I think is a good example of us giving a false perspective on greatness. It starts out in verse 20 saying, "Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him." Here's the background. Jesus, the greatest leader, the greatest man of all time, picked 12 other great men to be his disciples and to carry out his kingdom. 2 of those great men were James and John. They happened to be brothers. And James and John were referred to as the sons of thunder. That's what Jesus referred to these 2 as, the sons of thunder. Now, if that isn't a name that has greatness and strength and boldness and courage written all over it, I don't know what does. They're referred to as the sons of thunder. But in this story, here's what the sons of thunder do. The sons of thunder ask their mommy to go to Jesus to try to talk him into a place of greatness next to him. And not only do they send their mommy, they go with him. When their mommy addresses Jesus, they're standing right there. How would you like it if Tuesday you went to work and your mommy followed you there? And your mommy went into your boss and said, "Hey, can you give little Johnny a place of prominence in the company? Can you give little Johnny a promotion?" Now, the mom didn't have it half right. At least she was smart enough to know that if she was trying to prop her sons up for greatness, she knew who Jesus was. She knew he had the power. But still, they were thinking about it wrong. Verse 21 says, "And he said to her, 'What do you wish?' She said to him, 'Grant that these 2 sons of mine may sit one on your right hand and the other on your left in your kingdom.' But Jesus answered and said, 'You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?' They said to him, 'We are able.' So he said to them, 'You will indeed drink my cup and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit on my right hand and my left is not mine to give, but it is for those whom it is prepared for by my Father.' And then when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the 2 brothers. And jump down to 26. 'Yet it shall not be so among you.'" But here's the description of greatness he's giving. "But whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." If we want to achieve greatness, we have to think about the level of sacrifice that we're okay with. We have to think about the level of service that we're going to provide God's people. We have to think about what type of servant are we going to be. They're preoccupied with status and not serving. And when we think about Memorial Day, we think about all those men and women that served. And when we see an officer, somebody that's in one of the branches of the military, we see them in uniform. When we go up to and greet them, we don't say, hey, thank you for your position of power. Thank you for your position of authority. Hey, thank you for representing the Army well by dressing up in your nice clothes and shiny shoes. We don't say any of that. What do we say when we greet somebody from the military? We say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Because one of those things somebody in the military does, especially in a time of crisis, is they do whatever it takes. A servant does whatever it takes. Jesus did whatever it took to save our souls. When you're serving, you do whatever it takes. But we go through our lives sometimes and we can't figure it out because we think it's a dichotomy between being a servant and being great. And we think, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. I can't be a servant in God's kingdom and achieve greatness at the same time. But what does Jesus say? Jesus says that the only way you're going to come to greatness is if you serve. The only way that you're going to achieve a level of greatness that I really have planned for you, that I really desire for you, is if you serve. When Jesus talks about greatness, it's always in terms of serving. He never said take greatness out of our life. He never said we shouldn't achieve greatness. He never said we shouldn't strive. He just said, here's the way we do it. And sometimes when we're not achieving greatness, or we're not a servant, we kind of place it up on the altar of faith. And we say, things aren't going well. Things are in chaos. I'm just going to be in faith. Things aren't going well. I'm just going to trust God. Pray about it. Those are all great things. Don't get me wrong. You don't take this next comment the wrong way. But sometimes when we throw words like faith out, and we throw words like trusting God out, and we throw phrases like, I'm just going to pray about it. You know, sometimes what that means, at least I'll speak for myself. You know what sometimes that means in my life when I say things like that? Is that I have no idea what's going on. That I have no idea how I'm going to chase greatness. Those things are all great if you have faith and put your faith into action at the same time. If you trust God and you trust God while you're walking out that faith at the same time. If you're praying and walking out those prayers at the same time. So as you're praying, as you're trusting, as you're filled with faith, that Jesus can move in you and through you to achieve the greatness that he's called you to achieve. Mark 9:33 is the parallel story to the one in Matthew. And in verse 33 of chapter 9, it says, then he came to Capernaum, and he was in the house. He asked them, what was it you disputed among yourselves on the road? See, they were walking down the road to the next town, and the 12 disciples were arguing and talking and bickering about who was the greatest. And Jesus overheard them. They weren't talking about the next town, what ministry they were doing. They weren't talking about, how many souls they saved, how many people baptized, or how many people were healed. The 12 were arguing about who's the greatest. Verse 34, but they kept silent, for on the road they had disputed among themselves who would be the greatest. And he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, if anyone desires to be first, he shall be last of all and a servant of all. See, Jesus was excited about this arguing because he knows with 12 guys with passion, with a competitive nature, with just talking about who's greatness, he could work in them and through them. If I walk into a conference room meeting with 12 people, and I walk in and there's 12 people in there arguing and being competitive and maybe disagreeing with each other and not getting along, I can work with those 12 people because I can rally those 12 people around with a common cause and we can achieve greatness. If I walk down the hall into the next conference room with 12 other people and they're all staring at me and they're just checking their watch, seeing what time lunch is or what time they're going to go home or see if they can get out of there early, and they're not competitive, they've got no thoughts, they may be the smartest people in the world. They may be called to great things. But without that ambition, without that competitiveness, without that wanting to win, without that doing whatever it takes attitude, they'll never amount to anything. So Jesus was okay with them talking about it. He doesn't shut them down. He just shows them how to be great. If Jesus wanted to kill the thought of us being great in our lives, he would have addressed it right here. If he didn't want us to chase down greatness or be competitive or want to win in this life, in his kingdom, this would have been his opportunity. But he does the opposite. He seizes this opportunity, not to tell these guys to shut up. He tells these guys, okay, guys, I got it. If you want to be great, let's do it. But here's the way to do it. You're going to serve. Greatness is always found in serving. If we think of it any other way, you're missing Jesus' entire message of the Bible. We have to have that competitive spirit. One of the most competitive people of all the Bible is David. King David. Briefly, I'm going to share a few verses. 1 Samuel 17, verse 33. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against the Philistines to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. Right? All David's brothers were fighting Goliath, and nobody could win. And even David's dad said, not you, David. You're just that lowly servant. Verse 34, but David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and he took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it, and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it rose against me, I killed it by its beard and struck it and killed it. I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. David was a servant. David was a servant that rose to be a king. Not because he had the qualities of a king or the qualities of a warrior or the qualities of a shepherd, but he had the qualities of a servant. Jesus is looking for the qualities of a servant. And for many of you that are still struggling with, boy, I don't know about this calling to be greatness. I don't know about this striving to be great. Nobody ever thinks of me of great. Nobody ever told me of great. It doesn't matter. It's the way Jesus thinks of you. It's the way you think of yourself. See, David, if you're in that camp, David is just like you, because David was the one that nobody cared about. David is the one that nobody saw. David was the little bitty guy that probably in the eyes of most people was going to amount to nothing. And many times we go through life and we say, man, why am I not a king? Well, you're not a king because you're not a servant. You're not a warrior because you're not a servant. You're not a shepherd because you're not a servant. See, the way David lived his life, when David was a king, he was a servant. When David was a warrior, he was a servant. When David was a shepherd, he was a servant. And the way he was a servant and a shepherd, I think he set the standard for being a shepherd. Because I don't think other shepherds would have responded like this. I think other shepherds would have been, I'm a shepherd. I can't do things that I shouldn't do. I'm not going to go get that lost one. We've got plenty here. I'm not going to go chase after that one. It's unimportant. I'm not going to go chase after that one. It is what it is. I'm not going to go chase after the one. I've got 99% of the other ones, and they're taken care of. not David. David was setting a new standard. He was raising to a level of greatness that he knew God had called him to do. He wasn't interested in sameness. He didn't care what those other shepherds were doing. All he cared is what had God called him to do? What was the level of greatness? What was the level of service that God had called him to do? See, when we choose to be a servant, our opportunities and greatness is unlimited. Paul explains it like this in 1 Corinthians 9:24. Do you know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. Paul's saying, run to win. The Bible says run to win. The Bible says don't run for it's good for your health. Don't run because it's a nice day. Don't run so you can be in good shape. It says run to win. And in this era of sameness that we live in, and that nobody can be great, and that nobody can be extraordinary, I promise you this. When you start to run, when you start to live a life trying to chase down God's plan for your life, when you try to run with greatness and achieve greatness in serving, you know what's going to happen? You're going to run a little bit. You're going to look to your left. You're going to look to your right. And there's not going to be very many people running with you. Because they're all back here in the back, making sure they don't ruffle any feathers, making sure they don't offend anybody. They're all back here meeting at whatever the lowest common denominator is. And I know it's kind of a tough subject, and some of you are still thinking ambition, being competitive is bad. I'm not making this stuff up. This is in the Bible. And my Bible is the same Bible as yours. This is what Jesus directs us and commands us to do. The thought process that everybody gets a prize, everybody has a completion grade, everybody's the same, that sounds good. It sounds good. The problem is it's just not biblical. It's just not. Jesus is looking for greatness. Everybody's not going to get a trophy. That's why it says run to win the race. Jack, my youngest, came home yesterday. This is a true story. This doesn't just preach well. This happened. He came home and said, Dad, I got this ribbon, first place at school today. I was like, oh, that's great, buddy. I was like, what was that for? He was like, oh, it was an art class or a drawing or a painting or something. Now, before you think that's really impressive, my son has a huge calling on his life. He is going to do awesome, great things. He has a lot of skills and abilities and things I wish I had in me, but they're on him. I'm pretty confident that one of them is not being artistic. One of them is not being an artist or a painter or whatever. So this first place ribbon that he and 35 other people got, I assume, it's not going to do him any good. Because when he's 30 years old and everybody's looking for sameness, and he walks into his boss's office and says, hey, where's my blue ribbon? There's going to be a lot of people looking for the blue ribbon. You know what your boss is going to say? I don't have anything in blue. I got this one that's pink. Because in the real world, there are no completion grades. You either achieve or you don't. Sorry, Anna. You either win or you lose. That's the real world. See, we have to raise the next generation of kids that they want greatness. They want God-inspired greatness. They don't want sameness. I just heard on the radio twice this week, and I didn't believe it the first time. The only reason I'm going to repeat it is because I heard it twice. So it has to be true, right? But there was a poll of young people, and the question was, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? What do you want to be when you grow up? Fireman, police officer, baseball player, teacher, doctor, lawyer, whatever. What do you want to be when you grow up? 37% of the people, 37% of the people, of the kids, said they want to be a YouTube star. A YouTube star. I know there's a few in here that don't even know what a YouTube star is. Number two, in second place, 17% of the kids wanted to be a vlogger, which is a blogger, but on video. That's crazy. Now, I'm not saying there's not somebody out there that their God calling is to be a YouTube star or a vlogger, but we can't have an entire generation. We can't have 34% of the kids doing that, I guarantee it. It's a recipe for disaster. We're called to be great. There's greatness inside of you. Jesus didn't come to be less than great. Jesus didn't come to finish in second place. Jesus came to be Savior of the world. Right? He didn't come to be, I'm going to be Savior of north of the equator. No. He was competitive. He wasn't coming for anything less than everybody. If Jesus was okay with mediocrity, if Jesus was okay with sameness, if Jesus was okay with average, he would have died on the cross for 50% of the people. Now, he still would have been a great king, so he would have probably one-upped us, and he would have been to the cross for 51% of the people, and still would have been an overachiever. That's not the case. Jesus came to win. Jesus was competitive. Jesus came because his vision, his ambition was for everybody. It was for greatness. Jesus is calling us to be great. And how are we going to be great? Through service. Greatness is always measured in terms of service. That's what Jesus' word said. If you want to be great, if you want that greatness that's already inside of you to come out, it's going to be through service. Like David. David was the king because he was a servant, a warrior because he was a servant, a shepherd because he was a servant. I said earlier, I want to be a great dad, a great husband, a great pastor. Well, how am I going to do those things? The only way I'm going to be a great husband is if I serve my wife. The only way I'm going to be a great dad is if I serve my kids. The only way I'm going to be a great pastor is if I serve my church. Now, what does that mean for all those things? I don't know. It just means do whatever it takes. It means to serve and serve and serve again and serve again. That's the way I'm going to become great. That's the way you're going to become great. And that's the way this church is going to become great. Amen? Amen. Stand as I pray.